right is Ms. Farida Jacobes. She's acting as the Regional Education Officer. And behind me, I have my Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government. And to her left, we have Ms. Diane Caesar, the accountant. And to her left is Ms. Hannah Crichton, the Personnel Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ario. As a reminder, the Legislative Body of Evidence Act, Chapter 108, speaks to every person being examined under this act who willfully gives false evidence shall be guilty of perjury. We ask you as the committee to ensure that all of the information that you are providing are truthful and fact agency and 8 for 2018. And I put all of those paragraphs for our consideration. The floor is open to all members. Member Maipa, yes.
Chairman, I just want for my clarity, this agency has 4 programs.
Yes, we do have 4 programs.
And the region has a Deputy Regional Executive Officer.
Not to the present.
So the head of Program 1 right now is...
Head of Program 1, we have the AREO.
AREO,
Mm-hmm.
the Assistant Regional Executive Officer. And that person is here,
No, his person not here.
but the chief accountant is here.
Yes, Chief comes here.
And the chief accountant will assist you
Okay, yeah.
with the finance aspect.
Yes. Mm.
But I remember when we were examining Region 10, sir, that we were guided by the Accountant General that whoever is heading Program 1, by right, that person should be the Deputy Regional Executive Officer. In this instance, we don't have a Deputy Regional Executive Officer at the region, but we have an Assistant Regional Executive Officer performing the functions of Program Manager for Program 1. So is that person responsible for the administration and finance program?
No, the person's based in Cameroon.
The AREO.
Based in Cameroon.
Yeah.
So can we ask the Accountant General for some guidance because I'm finding it difficult to comprehend how these regions are allowing the chief accountant, who is responsible for the operational management of the regional accounting unit, to hold that responsibility as the signing authority for Program 1. So can we get some guidance from the Accountant General, please?
To the chair, I just need to ask Ario. Ario, does the chief accountant sign as the head of department?
Yes, AG.
In a case where, in this region here, the fact that the AREO is not within the headquarters, it's understandable that based on AREO, that person will not be able to sign. They are at a sub-district in Cameroon. Therefore, that person will be unable to sign.
But how is the person performing the functions of head of a program and is not within the vicinity of administering the operation? In terms of the program entails having oversight not only with the regional accounting unit, but with the personnel department, with the stores, and the administrative aspect, basically. So if the person is based in Cameroon, how can they perform the duties?
The person cannot perform the duties. Has to go to the AREO then.
So
AREO, are you performing those duties outside of the chief accountant signing as head of department?
Yes, but I sign also as the head of budget agency. Yeah.
So it is so the AREO is not the acting program manager.
No, he take up the administrative responsibility in sub-district of Cameroon.
In the sub-district.
For the sub-district, that's
For the
correct.
sub-district.
Yes.
Yes. So your first program is right now administered by your chief accountant.
Yes, you're correct.
And your chief accountant has the signing authority for the program.
Yes, as head of department.
Okay. I just wanted that clarity.
Okay.
And that is because there is not a deputy regional executive
Yes,
officer.
correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
FS, I notice you have your hand up. FS?
That was Council Chair, sorry. Let me take
Madam
it.
Chair?
Ario, when we look at 2018, when we left off, we were looking at 98 to 1002 to do with measured works, and that there was no information about contract and how this was awarded. Have you been able, in the period between when you last were here and now, have you been able to shed any greater light on 98 to 101, regarding the 2018? So that these were works that weren't measured. There appears to have been no information regarding the tendering process, and that but that the payment vouchers did not have completed measured works, etc. So that regarding this particular one, we had flagged this as a concern. Have you been able to shed any greater light on this?
Yes,
2018.
these matters was sorted out and information was forwarded for verification by the audit office.
Mr. Chairman, it is say 998. Could the accounting officer give us the details as it relates to the tendering process? What was the tendering process used?
This is an open tender,
And it was advertised?
advertised, yeah.
So why it wasn't given to the Auditor General at the time of audit?
No, as a matter of fact, the tender process and the additional information like final measure works and so forth attached to the voucher when the audit office visited.
I can't hear you correctly, sir.
When the audit office visited the region, some of the information like the final measure works and so weren't attached to the voucher. Subsequently, this was forwarded to the audit office for verification.
So this was an open tender that was advertised?
Yeah. Mm.
And copies of that advertising was clipped to the voucher and so on, sent to the audit office?
Yeah.
And the audit office is confirming that?
AG?
Mr. Chair, I'll have my officer confirm if he got the tendering and award process. Mr. Chair, we are advised that with respect to the tendering and award, we haven't gotten that.
What is the document you're claiming that the audit office was provided with?
The final measure works is the contract document.
Audit office, could you verify that?
Mr. Chair, yes, I was furnished with the completed measured works for the river defense, but with regards to the tendering and award, I'm not in possession of that information at present.
But I'm getting the understanding from the REO that apparently the measured work documents was the only documents that was missing that was sent to the audit office. Is that so?
Okay.
Do you have it in your possession now, a copy of that document?
The tender process?
Yes.
No, it doesn't have that.
But do you have it at the RDC?
Mr. Chairman, if I hear correctly,
No, it's in the talk about auditors.
I did ask a question and the officer said that this was an open tender. Clippings of the newspaper advertising were submitted. And if that was submitted, why we don't have it?
No, the tender process wasn't submitted. The final measure work was submitted.
Yeah, the final measured works is totally different from the question I'm asking.
Okay.
The Auditor General says no details regarding the tendering process. Was this open tender? Was it selective? Was it sole source? Where are the minutes? Where's the award? Where's the contract sum? How many people tendered? And so on. Where is that information?
That information is within
It is written.
that information is at the office. The tender board process.
Could I ask a question?
Hold on.
Based on,
Let the bishop.
not
finish.
for a response, if the bishop.
No.
Okay, let him finish.
This is a query.
I just
ahead.
want to ask, just more of a, last week when we met with the region, one of the things that was, we were made aware of is that the audit office and the region, they tried to meet virtually, but that meeting could not go through
Yes.
because the
Authority
communication issues. So when they left here last week, the office of the auditor general had to meet with the region. But I am, based on the responses that I'm hearing, I am asking the question now if that meeting actually happened.
It was a physical meeting with the finance secretary. I was absent from that meeting.
A physical meeting with the finance secretary?
Yeah.
Yes, they were to meet with the FS.
They met with the FS last week. I can't, Ario, which date was that? Was it on Wednesday? You met with FS?
Thursday.
Thursday. I was absent from that meeting.
Well,
So,
I will
yeah, we
just
should
allow the bishop to continue.
RU met me on Thursday, and I told him to work with all the supporting documents by the explanation required from PSC. You could confirm that, right, RU?
Yes, FS.
Okay.
Bishop, go ahead.
Yes. REO, remind me, were you the REO in 2018?
No,
Who was the REO?
Mr. Edinburgh. Mr.
2016.
Roderick Edinburgh. Roderick Edinburgh.
Roderick Edinburgh. This audit query at 998, have you had the benefit of communicating with Mr. Edinburgh?
After many tries, I finally got through to him on Friday. And the conversation we had, he just came back in the country but 2 days ago, and he's out of his jurisdiction. He's in the country and he cannot make it.
So you can really help us here this morning.
Anyway,
If the Auditor General says he don't have details about the process for the award of a contract, that has to be addressed by the accounting officer. Because it could mean that it was sole source, he just had a friend of contract. It could mean that there was a proper process, but the documentation were not submitted. All kinds of things it could mean. This is not a small query. My question to you, did you ask your officers at the region who were there at the time to facilitate the provision of this information?
yes, I do.
And what was the response you got?
Mr. Chair, can I have when Mr. Etchell is finished, please?
Could I get the answer, please?
Yeah, the tender process for the maintenance of the scene of defense. They have here 3 bids were received, and it was awarded to the most responsive bidder at $4,782,150.
It was awarded to what?
One, Mr. Morris Balgobin, as in lowest, most responsive bidder.
But that's not what the Auditor General is saying.
And you're saying it's awarded at
The Auditor
5.7.
General said it was awarded in the sum of 0.7 million.
Oh, okay. This one? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I was reading from the wrong page again. Yes, it's awarded 5.7.
Huh?
Yes, it was awarded 5.7.
And the same 3 bidders and the contract?
No. That was, I was reading, so my apologies, I was reading from another document. so I'm
Well,
not
tell us about this contract.
Well, right now, it doesn't have the information pertaining to the tender process.
So it was not provided.
It was no.
The region is not in possession of
Mr.
those
Chair,
documents.
can I have a question when you're available?
Go ahead, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Morning, how are you? Mr. Chair, I see that he has one Mr. Charles, the engineer. Or, sorry if I got the name wrong, I was writing, so I may be. Can I inquire with Mr. Charles or what the engineer, just in case I miss his name? Was he the engineer there in 2018 when this query was? Can I?
Go ahead, sir.
I was further advised by the engineer, the document.
Was he the engineer? That's the question, sir.
Was he the engineer, sir? 2018? Yeah, the engineer took up office in the region the 1st of November 2018.
And the award of this contract was made on the 19th of November 2018.
Yeah, so he's the
And well, we went through this before.
Hold on. I think Member Patterson should be given a follow-up. Is his question?
Thank you very much. I know we went through this here before, so right. So the engineer should be able to, that is I think why we send them back, to garner some information. The earlier questions were on the tender process. I think the REO was going to answer that, so that is outstanding. The overpayments or whatever the discrepancy in the measures would have happened while the engineer was there. Is that not so? And if that's not so, why can't the engineer during REO be able to provide the audit office with all the relevant information?
So,
We have a response.
yes,
there.
I was just advised that after going through the document, the tender process was followed. However, due to a typo error, instead of the tender board minutes, instead of having maintenance of the doctor's accommodation, we had the rehabilitation of doctor's accommodation. So when they had to check the document, the tender document, when we were looking for the maintenance doctor's accommodation, that wasn't there, but it was
Rehabilitation.
that is under rehabilitation.
Chairman,
What did the contract state?
even if it is rehabilitation, stated erroneously on the document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The contract is the contract.
Exactly.
The process is the process. So whether we call the sheep Stella or Stelly, it's the sheep we're talking about.
Yeah.
So tell us about the process.
Yes, the process was followed.
But where are the documents to show that it was followed? That's what we're asking for.
Can you see if the region is in possession of those documents?
Yes, we have the documents in the office.
Or you do have it?
Yeah.
So well, why it wasn't brought here this morning? Why we didn't bring it here this morning?
Mr. Chairman, if I can come in here too, I'm the one that raised the 998 1001, and I think this is where we got stuck the last time too. The issue is that REO, we know that you weren't the REO at the time, but our concern is, as in some regions, documents weren't available, couldn't be found, and that knowing the kind of grilling we went through the last time, it would have. I'm surprised that you didn't walk with as many documents as you could find to show that the story of what happened, whether it was a tender, it was appropriately done, it was appropriately evaluated, it was properly measured, because we're just dealing with the tendering issue. Under that same 998 1000 is the issue of contractors getting a contract signed and 2 days later wanting full payment, and there's no measured works to show how a contractor could in 2 days get full payment. Yes, there's another one that was paid in advance. Oh, it's the same one? So, I mean, these are major concerns. Something was amiss in the region. And so I would have hoped that when you went back, you would have done a proper, thorough search so that you come to this meeting with as much information. Even it's always wise, REO, to bring more than information than you need, than to work with skimpy information that allows for very intense examination, interrogation. So could you say, respond? You say there are tender documents. Could you say, one, they were evaluated by whom? Was it the regional tender board? Is there a record of that? Secondly, what is the record? Have you found the record to do with how the contractor was paid when no measured works were done and paid in full, just a few days within the signing of the contract? How were these anomalies created in the region? Is there a paper trail to this? What did you find? And could you please, if you haven't walked with them, we want them to be provided probably by Wednesday this week. You don't have to come personally necessarily, but we need to have photocopies of all the records you're talking about.
I have a pertaining to payment, right?
Yes.
The payment was done in 3 parts: first payment, second payment, and a final payment.
All were done before the retention period of this project was over.
And not necessarily, however, because at the end of the fiscal year, the documents are to be prepared and the checks would be dated the 31st of December. Not necessarily mean the contractor was paid on the 31st of December.
Hold. Please, Mr. Chairman. Wait. Ario, you're getting me a little bit concerned now. 1,000. Let's go to paragraph. I think you need to pace yourself. Yeah. And go paragraph by paragraph, because I think you're mixing up a number of contracts, but you may be. I shouldn't say you are. But paragraph 1,000 says, it is unclear how the final payment was processed without the detailed measured works breakdown attached. Examination of the attachment of final payment voucher revealed that the contractor submitted a request for payment for the sum of 2.5 million on November 21st, 2018, only 2 days after signing the contract. No details of the work. So there's November 21st is a full 6 weeks away from the end of the year. So this was final payment without measured and within 2 days of having signed the contract. So whatever you're talking about is not paragraph 1,000. Could we go to paragraph 1,000, please? And did you find any of this information?
This is the project that took 10 weeks. 10 weeks for completion. This is the project where the retention sum of 2%, the retention sum was paid before the retention period was over. All they did was to withhold the 2% withholding tax. This is the project that they paid out the money before the final completion or assessment of the project.
With no measured works.
Exactly. Look, I got everything right down here. This is when the engineer said,
This time it was revealed here that the engineer had given the staff to do the measurements and hadn't done, I think, the checks himself. Have you been able to verify that is so?
When the engineer mentioned about giving a junior staff to prepare a document, he was speaking on another project and not this particular project.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, let's see if we could walk through this and get some answers, because I think you're returning to bring clarity to get these paragraphs closed today. At paragraph 999, a contract for the maintenance of the river defense at Agatage was awarded in the sum of 4.782 million. It went to the second most competitive bidder. As of the 31st of December 2018, the full amount was paid to the contractor. Right? It didn't say what date this contract was awarded at the time. The full amount was paid to the contractor. Physical verification of the project revealed that the works were completed. However, it was found that the final payment voucher did not have a completed measured works valuation certificate attached. As such, the physical verification of the project could not determine whether or not any overpayments had occurred. 1,000 says now further, we're talking about the same project. It is unclear how the final payment was processed without the detailed measured works breakdown attached. Examination of attachments to the final payment voucher revealed that the contractor had submitted a request of payment of the sum of 2.5 million on the 21st of November, only 2 days after signing the contract. So the question I was asking earlier, the date of the signing of the contract was not included. This contract was signed on the 19th, and 2.5 million was paid on the 21st of November. No details of the works completed at the time to the value of 2.5 million was attached to the request for payment. So we went through this. You were supposed to bring us back some answers. How this happened? A contractor got a job and we lent him the money, or he did the work? 2 days after signing, 2.5 million, more than 50% of the contract sum. So the question, let's go see if we could go through it. How much the contractor should have been paid at the time of signing?
30%. We normally pay 30% on mobilization before at the signing of the contract.
30%?
Yeah.
And you get authorization to pay 30%?
These are hinterland projects,
hinterland
Mr. Chair,
projects.
if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
The hinterland projects normally give them 30% mobilization.
So you have authorization to pay 30%?
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, from here.
How we paid 50 plus?
I can't answer the question.
Could you inquire what was responsible for the payment of more than 50% 2 days after the contract was awarded?
I will attempt to.
Is there anybody from your staff present here who would have participated in processing this payment that could assist PSC in bringing clarity to this question?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if,
We have no one here who will facilitate the process.
I don't know if the
Could I-
audit
could I
office.
be-
No, on the same point, I just don't want to lose that point. It's on the same point that you were making.
Go ahead.
But I'm just looking at the paragraph 1,000 here, and I'm reading it saying the examination of attachments to the final payment voucher revealed that the contractor had submitted a request for payment of the sum of 2.5 million on November 21st, 2018. Only 2 days after signing the contract, no details of the work completed at the time to the value of 2.5 million was attached to the request for payment. But I'm seeing a request for payment, but I don't know, we are interpreting that as a payment was made. So I don't know if that could be our interpretation, if the audit office can assist us there.
998 said the full amount is paid by December 31st.
That's different.
All right. Could the Auditor General tell us when the payments on this contract were made? All the dates the payments were made.
Mr. Chair, I cannot give you the exact date at the moment, but to bring clarity to 1,000, when the payment is prepared for processing and attached to that voucher, we will go through every document attached to it. So attached to that particular voucher would have been a request of payment from the contractor for $2.5 million. But it's just a simple statement saying I hereby request a payment in the sum of 2.5.
So that does not say that a payment of 2.5 was made. I just want to be clear about that, because that's the assumption that all this line of questioning is going by.
Mr. Chair, just let me confirm that from the documents to clarify. But those were some of the anomalies that led us to requesting all this information to be provided by the RDC so that we could put the vouchers together and build a timeline.
But, Mr. Chairman, I hear the issue about the assumptions, but the Auditor General should advise us. Would you write in a report an anomaly but a request for payment if a payment was not made? Because the transaction truth is finality is what you're examining.
But the evidence must show that payment was made.
And there is no evidence
there's
of
no
such.
such evidence.
The chief accountant should be able to help us with that, Comrade Chairman, because for the payment to be made, the document got to first originate from the engineer.
Yeah, but based
and
on what
then
the RU has indicated, no one is in possession of that information. So I don't know if the chief accountant has it, but.
No, but Mr. Chairman, a more fundamental issue. The audit office examines financial transactions.
We're not refuting that.
If a financial transaction was not made, the audit office would not have been examining that transaction. So the only reason why he could find that the voucher didn't say what was the payment for is because a transaction took place. He's not just examining a request for payment, a transaction is what he's examining. But he's citing on the request for payment, the details were not there.
I'm not saying that the payment, I'm saying that we are, the line of questioning is
assumption
saying
that
that
this payment was done in 2 days' time.
yes, 2 days after that this payment was made. And I'm highlighting the fact that the paragraph doesn't say that. It says a requested payment because we have been examining the entire report.
Yes.
The office is very keen on saying when payment is made, when full payment is made. So the fact that they say a request for payment leaves me to believe that there was no payment made at that time, but a request for payment was made, that like it says. All right, so I just want to be clear with that.
But the audit office has indicated that they're not in possession of that document, so we can probably ask them to seek, to find out if they do have such a document, to verify when the payment of 2.5 was actually done. What we do know based on the audit report, when it was actually, when the total sum was actually made, the final payments.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think before the audit office do their research, could the region tell us the dates that these payments were made? And that's not rocket science, that's records. So could we get the dates?
Yes, payments were made in 4 parts. The first payment. The first payment of 1.7 million was made on the 23rd of November.
23rd of what?
23rd of November. One
The second payment?
of 1.4 December 2018, December. I got a date here, but just the second December. Like the other 3 parts are done in December.
Yeah,
No.
Break it down.
Break it down, sir.
You got a date. You got a date. Right? So you got a date. So you got a date. I was just advised by the chief accountant when we were trying to get this information, and the records just state that the 23rd of November, the first payment was made,
All right.
and another 3 payments were made in
The
December.
request for 2.5, was it made?
No, 1.7 were paid.
Is there a request for 1.7?
No,
So you pay 1.7, there is not a request. And there was a request for 2.5. What happened? Tell us.
Mr. Chair, can I, before follow up, a request for payment doesn't have to match what they are.
Exactly. What do you contract acts for?
RDC pay.
What is
The
it,
contract
1 point
that asks
what?
for $400 billion doesn't mean you have to
1
pay.
point what was the first
I am not
payment, sir?
disputing that. I'm seeking clarity. I'm seeking clarity.
But I don't understand, Mr. Chair. Maybe because distance I'm here. If a contractor submits a payment for 2.5, but the REO said he made 1.4 payment, you're asking where's the? Mr. Chair, could you help me out what the specific information? I quite don't understand the question here.
No, it's 1.7 in the 20.
Listen, the question, well, based on the report, the assumption was that 2.5 was paid on the request of the contractor. The REO has revealed that such a request wasn't honored, and more so 1.7, I believe, or 1.4.
1.7 on the 23rd of November.
1.7 was paid. Within that,
Mr. Chair.
can we have the audit office? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just to add, I agree that what the contractor requests doesn't have to be paid, but we were looking at a voucher where the contractor is requesting one sum. The region paid a different sum. The contractor sum didn't have what he was claiming for, and then the region is paying a different figure, and they're not explaining what they're paying for either. And that's why we flagged it. Because the contractor is requesting
That's
one
a
amount
paragraph one. Tells you you're referencing.
So where in the paragraphs actually highlight that
Mr. Chair, can I say
issue?
something?
Where in
Mr.
the
Chair?
paragraphs highlight that
Yes,
issue?
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I think we just are running off the thing. If you do a quick check, the 1.4 is the 30% mobilization payment. That's the first payment. You don't let us.
It's not 1.4.
It wasn't 1.4. It was 1.7.
That's what the gentleman said. Maybe the
1.7, right? Was
1.723 is what I was told. First payment.
Well, you can correct that. I mean, but what I'm saying is, you can check though, is that let us not. I don't think you have to produce a measured work for the mobilization.
no.
Interim payments after that, you'd have to have measured work. So I think we need to be going off track here a little, Mr. Chair.
Was it for mobilization, this request?
No, it wasn't for mobilization.
What was it for?
For the actual work.
Was any money provided for mobilization?
No, it wasn't providing mobilization.
Comrade Chairman.
But isn't the contractor entitled for mobilization?
Yes.
And is it a possibility? I don't know. He merged the mobilization request with the measured work, made it amount to that amount. Could that be possible?
He
The
made a request.
1.7, first payment.
Yes, the actual measured work is paid for.
Mr. Chairman.
There was a question that was not answered if Comrade Jill would have
Go ahead.
my indulgence, and that has to do with the breakdown of the 4 payments.
Yes, I'm going back to
We
it.
have the 1.7 that was told to us as the first payment.
Oh,
Then we have the 1.4 in December with no date, and we're awaiting the other 2 payments. But greater than that, this issue seems to be about record keeping. The chief accountant is supposed to have in his or her possession a logbook that they keep a check,
Contract register.
a contract register that they keep. And when they get these documents, they're supposed to be updating it. So fishing for this information is telling me that there seem to be no contract register at the region, and there seem to be no up-to-date documentation in terms of how we facilitate payment for these contracts. So if Comrade Jill would crave my indulgence, we need the breakdown of the 2 other payments, and we need to know if there is a contract register. And the contract register is supposed to have all of these information. Provide us with the date also. So please.
But before we go into all of that, I want to know what was the reason that you did not have the 30% mobilization fee paid out? Like, what was the reason that the first payment was a payment of 1.7 and that payment was for measured work? What is the reasoning behind all of that? Because that is not aligned by the practices altogether. So there must be a reason for that. So if the accounting officer could advise us on why wasn't the mobilization fee up 30% paid, and also and actually making way for the first payment of 1.7 to be paid for measured work, as it's been reported here today.
You got 3 questions there, right?
To answer your first question about the payments, the 4 payments, the one was made on the 23rd of November, but when we examine the records at the accounting department, you have entries there for 3 other payments during the month of December. But however, no dates were attached to it, just had the month and the year.
And what were those 3 payments?
The second payment was 1.489, the third payment was 964,000, and the final payment was 468,000.
And no dates were attached.
Yeah, they don't have the month and the year, but no specific date.
Can you request, can you repeat in the number? 1.7, 1.4.
964
Uh-huh.
and 468.
468.
Yeah.
Could you say who signed these documents, Ario, with no dates on it? Who signed these payments?
The payments,
Yes, who signed the documents that you found showing the payments but no date?
it's an entry in the contract register.
And do you know who entered it that way? Are there any records in the accounts to show who paid?
The chief accountant.
Mr. Chair.
Hold your horses, man.
Can we have the audit office proper response here? AG?
Mr. Chair, to add to what the RO is saying, based on our records, the first payment of 1.764 was received by the contractor on the 23rd of November. The second payment of 1.489 was received by the contractor on the 12th of December 2018. The third payment of 964,026 was received by the contractor on the 21st of December 2018. And the final payment of 468,651 was received by the contractor on the 11th of January 2019. So those are the dates when the contractor received the payments.
Could I ask the Auditor General where those records came from? Because his records don't have any dates, yours do. And they're different dates
What
too.
influenced those exactly?
And they're different dates.
Mr. Chair, these records were taken off from the payment vouchers, which
So
our auditors examined.
So can I understand, Auditor General, that the REO, the region's system shows payments with no dates, and in one case, a date that doesn't match yours, and the payment vouchers show a different date or dates included. So is this a problem of record keeping, or is it that there's no checks and balances in the system? What does this reveal?
Yeah, but how is it that the dates are different?
Yeah.
I mean, the audit office garnered their data from the agencies. So if the agency is providing a different date, how does, I'm confused how the audit office would have a different date. Where, I don't understand.
Mr. Chairman.
That's the dates when the contractor received the payment, right? So I'm not sure if the date they're telling you about, if it's the date they prepared the check.
That's the date y'all prepare the check?
Registry.
No, that we prepare the payment. The checks don't be prepared by the accounting unit.
So your date is from the checks?
If the contractor received the check, they should have been for advisors.
Mr. Chair, we should have been informed because we spent a significant amount of time on these paragraphs, owing to hear that all the questions we've been asking so far could have been answered from the very beginning.
Mr. Chairman, on the same transaction, having received these 4 payment schedules, at paragraph 1001, we had valuation number 1 for 2 million. A valuation certificate is prepared by the regional authorized official, 2 million. And then we had valuation number 2 for 3.689 million. So the total valuation for the two, with 2 and 3.5, would have been 5.689 million, which is more than the contract sum. Who prepared these valuation certificates?
Ario?
Okay. I must say, I cannot answer that question. However, a valuation was prepared by however, according to our records here, right, the four payments that were made to the contractor doesn't match the valuation.
It's two different people that are handling this contract management. Somebody make a valuation who's not managing the project, and somebody who's managing the project. It's two different entities, or it was one entity?
And then the entrance from the contract register is different. I have a funny feeling all this was filled in after. Uniclan, you get more time before suspension.
Yes.
Teresa not in that group. So Garrett's not in that group. You will look fine. Eh? Is you alone, my
No, I haven't received a response. I'm waiting.
Good. You'll find out.
I can't answer offhand now why the two valuations with two different amounts were attached to the voucher. But however, the
Who
payment.
prepared the valuation certificates?
It was the evaluation was prepared by the overseer, Mr. Andrew Chandler, and certified by the regional engineer sitting next to me.
Go that again for me. The valuation certificates were prepared by who?
An overseer by Andrew Chandler, and the document was verified, certified by the regional engineer which is to my left.
So, what was the basis of the preparation of these valuations?
The basis is right. Okay. As I'm advised by the engineer here that we don't know how we arrive at this two valuation at 2 million and 3.6 million from the audit report, but based on the payments that were made here, the valuations.
How you mean you don't understand? The auditors have to see valuation certificates to write it. Could the auditors tell us where they found the valuation certificate?
Mr. Chair,
AG?
these valuations would have been attached to the payment voucher, and that is why this anomaly was flagged, because the figures were all different. So we advised that let's get all the vouchers and go through to see how really they were processing payments. So the valuation is showing you one thing, the actual amount paid is showing you something else, and then there's the work. So how do we verify value for money when everything is different?
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow us through this to see if we could get some clarity. A contract is signed totaling 4.782 million. The amount of money that should have been paid as a mobilization, if a mobilization was required in the contract, was 1.440 million. Forest breach, we paid 1.7723 million 2 days after. Right? The 23rd. Secondly, the second payment was a 1.479. A valuation certificate for 2 million was prepared. Then we made another payment of 964. A valuation certificate for 3.689 million was prepared. The valuation certificates combined are greater by 1 million than the contract sum. Was there a variation to this contract? And who managed this contract?
You manage it. You manage the contract. There was no variation, and the contract was managed by Andrew Chandler.
And where is Andrew Chandra? Well, you know you couldn't answer this paragraph this morning. You were not the REO at the time, you already said that. You found out who managed it. Bring the person here to answer the questions. The engineer delegated his responsibility to Andrew Chandra.
Yeah.
Well, let the engineer answer if he delegated his responsibility to Andrew Chandra.
Morning, members. According to the records reviewed, payments for this contract were made in 4 parts.
We already heard that, sir.
Yes, sir. And that the payment would have been processed based on valuations, or should have been processed based on valuations equating to this amount. So I can't see how it is that for the valuation 1 and 2.
You can't
These
see
amounts
when you
were
certify it.
Did you certify these valuations?
Yes, sir. To my
So you can't
knowledge,
see.
to my knowledge, based on the records that are you recently
No.
provided.
The records. You are intricately a part of those records because you certify the evaluation. So we mean based on the records.
Based on
And
the-
REOs don't act on,
Based
the
on
REOs
the-
act on guidance from technical staff. So let's get that clear. The technical staff has to guide the REO. So it is a document that had to come from the Public Works Department to provide that guidance.
So, engineer, if you could help us, what is the role you played as it relates to the management of this contract? Tell PSC that.
Sir, the contract was directly managed by the overseer, and I would have certified the payments after measured works was presented in order to process payment.
And you went and did the measurements.
No, sir. The overseer assisted with that.
So the project was directly managed by the overseer. He did the measurements.
Yes, sir.
And you certified the payments.
Yes, sir.
So how you certified?
But how can he certify a document that he did not measure? He doesn't have the measurement.
Sorry,
He's going on the word of the
relying
overseer.
on the supporting staff
He was relying on the supporting staff.
for this information.
You saw these two valuations that came in? 2 million and 3 points.
No, sir.
You didn't? You,
No, sir.
You didn't see those valuations?
No, sir.
So how the Auditor General got it in his record that there were two valuations? Auditor General, could you tell us who submitted those valuations?
Mr. Chair, I'm not in possession of them, but they were attached to the valuation, the payment voucher we would have examined. So it's there. So
Mr. Chair, can I get a question in, please?
can we get the vouchers back from the sub-treasury to confirm?
Go ahead, Member Price.
Mr. Chair, I have to direct this question to the audit office. Okay? They are raising in, I think in 101, that the two valuations were prepared for 2 million and 3 point X. However, you are also confirming, Mr. Audit Office, that none of those valuations that were paid were honored. There were four payments, which were paid, and the four payments came up to the contract sum. Right? So I'm trying to see what is the real why did you include these two things if they were not honored, or if they were if they were there by mistake, if they were there in error. But the region never honored any of these three payments that are there. These two payments that are listed there, but they honored the four, which obviously made up the contract sum. The audit officer, I'm seeking to get some clarity from.
Yes, AG.
Mr. Chair, when we do these physicals, we normally ask for the final payment voucher. When the contract would have ended, that would have all the details attached to it. We would use that voucher and do our examination. When that voucher is presented to us, all the other attachments that the region or the agency provides, we would go through and check to see that they're in compliance with how valuations are generally supposed to be prepared and that they tell the information they're required to. We had flagged this one in particular because of these very anomalies. We were confused at the time because the contractor is requesting one thing, the actual payment made is something else. And we couldn't decipher how really they were processing payments, if it was a problem with the region not being sure of how to do these payments, or if we were trying to determine basically how is it that these figures are varying so much. So those figures that we would have pulled up there would have been attached to the payment that was processed. So we're not disputing that the contract sum was not exceeded. There was no variation. The amounts paid are within the contract, the signed contract amount. However, the way in which they were done, we were trying to see, because if you're going to process valuation, one, there must be something to say that this is what we're paying for at the time. With this contract, there wasn't an advance payment. It was actually a measured works being paid. An advance payment under a contract is not mandatory in all instances. It's an interest-free loan granted to the contractor, so they don't necessarily have to request an advance payment. They can forego that, and they can go right into doing the work, depending on their cash flow, and then claim a forced payment. Bear in mind, an advance payment has to be covered by a bond also. So some contractors opt not to take an advance payment. So that's why we were trying to piece together how really the region was making payments under this particular contract, because of the same anomalies that we picked up.
Member Price.
Thank you. Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Follow up, please. Thank you very much, Doctor, because your response is consistent. However, I'm asking once again that you have raised in paragraph, let me get it here correctly, in paragraph 101, 1001, right, that you have raised that you've seen these two valuations. However, I have not seen any subsequent information from the office that says that these valuations were not honored. So obviously, I've not seen any information whatsoever to say that what a contractor requests does not necessarily have there any relationship to what is paid based on that. The briefing notes does not explain the briefing notes that you said that these here that this is a whatever. I don't want to put the word on it. Could even be an error because it's past the contract sum, right? But you haven't seen anything. It's left there. We're confirming now that the 4 payments, irrespective of, I'm not going into the tender process and so forth, irrespective of what it is, the 4 payments adds up to the contract sum, right? You have now since clarified that 101 was not honored, the payments were made, some other thing. At least you should have said to PAC in your briefing notes that 101 was whatever it is, an error, lack of technical knowledge, an attempted fraud, whatever, but you said nothing, and that is why we're back and forth on this particular matter. So can you now clarify to the Audit Office 101, Para 101 to 1001, so that we don't go back to it anymore? Clarify the status of it.
AG?
Mr. Chair, the figures stated there in 101, remember we were examining a voucher with supporting documents there. These figures would have been there. We would have requested the region to advise us how is it this is happening, on what basis you were processing payments. At the time when we would have completed this audit, we would have raised these same queries with them, and they too were at a loss to provide us with an explanation how this could have slipped through. As such, we couldn't conclude if it's an error, a typo, or who really did the valuation or so. So that is why it would have ended up as a paragraph reading the way it is, because we too, up to this point, were unable to decipher what was really happening. So it's only now we're getting clarity.
But in all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking to clarify, I know why you did it, because I fully understand why you did it, and you're absolutely right to do it if it's something. I'm asking to clarify the current status of it based on all the information you have here now. Save PAC having to go down the route again.
That's me. Yeah, through the chair, given the information provided now on meetings with the REO and this engineer, we will see to bring closure to the matter once we have all the information and the clarifications presented.
But Mr. Chairman, I would still like to know who prepared the valuation certificates. Yes, it's 2018, let it go.
So, okay, REO, can you provide that information within a week's time?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
And finally, for me, Mr. Chair, so we got 2 things that is still in my mind for clarity. And I noticed the PS of the ministry is here, and perhaps they can get some guidance with some technical help. Number 1, the contractor's request for 2.5 did not show what this payment was for, or what was the measured works, because he didn't take a mobilization advance. And he was paid 1.723. 2 days after. And while this was not a mobilization advance, and 2 days after 1.723 was paid, you got to prove to me that works to the tune of 1.723 was done in 2 days' time, because it wasn't a mobilization advance. It was a measured works. Secondly, what would have informed the person who prepared these valuation certificates that would have caused them to arrive at these numbers? Is this was an error? I didn't want to say it, but the honorable member, Mr. Patterson, said, was it an attempted fraud? Was it just incompetence? And number three, how was the regional engineer able to certify these valuation certificates when he did not participate in the measuring of these works? And listen to the language that was made. It is unclear, 2001, last line, how these payments were actually made under the contract. So while you got 4 payments that were made, it is unclear how these payments were actually made. We just decide today paying this, tomorrow paying that. How they were made, what is the basis of these payments? So those are answers I would like to have in the written response, sir.
Well, I think part of the question, the RE would be not in a position to give a response. How can you know what was in the evaluator's head?
Not the evaluator, it's the staff of the RDC. The evaluation reports are not prepared by evaluators. Here, IPC's interim payment certificates prepared by technical people. Not evaluation report.
Okay.
This is IPC's.
Within a week's time.
Okay, Chairman.
There be no other questions, Ario?
You continue to another paragraph?
Oh, we finished.
Can I just, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Ario, you're one the Ario at the time, but I advise you, I take the liberty, Mr. Chairman, of offering advice to the Ario that he should review the systems that you have operating in your council, in your RDC, and ensure that all the methods and systems are in place and being followed with great attention so that we don't have this problem again of documents and problems between documents in the registry contract registry versus payments, etc. And for the regional chairman, the engineer, I think you hope you will walk away from this knowing that you can't give other people your work to do, that you need to double check because it's on your say-so, not another staff, not on a clerk, that payments are made. And if you are found in the next round, you could very well be surcharged because that's the law. And so I hope that the region takes seriously this intervention. Mr. Chairman, on the other level of former REOs and PSs, I think as a PAC, we need to have a discussion outside of the public session to deal with the absence of the former REOs and PSs, because I think it is very unfair to the present REOs and present PSs to answer for the tenure of another person. So I would like to ask that that issue of their absence and what do we do be put for us internally in the PAC, not at this level.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. And I hear Comrade Teixeira, and I do agree that there needs to be a discussion on the subject matter. However, we must also be cognizant of the fact that there are supporting staff and program managers that guide the respective accounting officers. And that is why I keep hammering the point that these programs must have their program managers function and operate. Unfortunately, last week we unearthed that Region 10 is not operating in that manner, where the Deputy Regional Executive Officer is not allowed to function. And here we have program managers, even if they're acting in the capacity, that are responsible for documentation to keep the process of accountability and transparency in check. The regional accounting unit has a document, the contract register that we spoke of, We have the engineer, they're supposed to play their role also in ensuring that they measure the work, and they're supposed to also ensure that they prepare the payment vouchers in keeping with measured works. And all this goes across the board for these technical officers that are the program managers. So as much as we want to belabor the point that current REOs, it's unfair for them to answer for previous REOs, the point must also be made that the supporting staff has to ensure that they do what is their duties.
Mr. Chairman, it's not just staff though, comment my Paul. One of the reasons when you look at the British Parliament and they have records going back, 1,000 years and so on, is record keeping and protection of documents. And that is under the laws of Guyana, under the whole issue of a series of legislation, including procurement, financial rules, archival rules, etc., about protection of state and government documents. And in fact, we probably have to look back at looking at the National Archives law because it may be outdated now. But there are certain records that must be kept for 30 years and embargoed before they even become public. There are others that must be kept on record so that it's also that you can, 20 years from now, go into your records and find what happened in your region, 20 years hence, regardless of people not being there. So yes, staff, and I hope that in preparation to come before the committee that there's better coordination between the agencies outside of the region and within the staff of the region. My advice is to think of the worst possible questions that the PAC could ask and prepare yourself for that before you come here in the future.
Mr. Chairman, during the course of the examination of the paragraphs, there were a number of queries related to payments and records and all of that, and also a number of queries that has to do with the engineering aspect of the execution of most of these contracts. I know that a lot of these payment documents would have been sent to the Ministry of Finance. And in the past, this PAC recognized that and had also recommended to accounting officers that they make copies of these payment documents when they send them on to the Ministry of Finance. So the REO might have been a little bit handicapped in providing proper answers to some of the queries. But notwithstanding that, I think we should once again state that the REOs in submitting their payment documents to the Ministry of Finance should also keep copies. And whether the REO now can say if that is one of the challenges he's currently faced with in terms of coming up with adequate answers to these queries, and whether the engineer can also say that, what was happening then, they have learned from the deficiencies that are highlighted here and have, sought to implement corrective measures to address these issues highlighted by the committee and also in the Auditor General report. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make a comment while I hear the views of the honorable members. Accounting officers are empowered to become accounting officers by the FMAA under the signature of the Finance Secretary. And the buck stops with the accounting officer. We can amend the act by way of recommendations. If we want to amend the act, we must go and amend the act. The buck stops with the accounting officer who is overseeing the agency, whether it's the permanent secretary or the REO. They have the power to sanction those officers under them, but the buck stops with them. And I agree with Comrade Teixeira, who's indicating that we have to discuss how we deal with previous REOs who are not here to answer for their tenure. Because it is becoming more and more obvious that some of these workings and things that happen where the documentation is not available, we're asking the questions to the wrong person. So, but I want to make it very clear. Yes, technical officers, chief accountant, engineers, program heads have a responsibility, but none of them are named as accounting officers under the FMAA. If you want to amend the act, move with it for amendment. But the person who accounts for the disbursement and expenditure of funds in a particular agency is the person who is authorized as the accounting officer under the FMAA. The PAC is guided by the FMAA, the Procurement Act, the stores regulations. Those are the documents that guide us, and those are the things that we have to comply with. Thank you, sir.
Comrade Chairman, if you will permit me another comment on this. I want to agree fully.
Can we be very brief, sir?
Yes, sir. I want to agree fully with Comrade Ejil that the buck stops with the accounting officer. It is very unfortunate that Public Accounts Committee is right now examining 2017 and 2018 reports. And it is very unfortunate that some of the former accounting officers are not within the jurisdiction, and I know of one who was recently contacted because no one knew the location. I know of one who appeared and didn't remember nothing, and I think it is paramount based on what was said by Comrade Ejil and Comrade Teixeira for this PAC to work expeditiously in completing these reports and come up to date with the Auditor General's report so that we can be not far behind where people can possibly lose their memory and where people can possibly not be within the jurisdiction and where people can possibly no longer be on the job. So the point made by Comrade Ejil is fully supported and endorsed. And the point made by Comrade Teixeira is fully supported and endorsed. And against that backdrop, we at PAC need to speed up and ensure that we reach current day in terms of the in terms of the Auditor General's report. No, I'm not saying we should gloss over anything. I'm saying we should work expeditiously and we should meet more frequently so that we can be able to finish the work, be up to date with the Auditor General's report, and hold the accounting officers accountable for their action within a space of time where it is not expected for them to lose their memory. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add one particular comment to that. I hear everyone on that point, but I don't want, yes, we have the accounting officers at the helm there, but I don't want the other staff, the engineers and so to not understand the seriousness of it all together. Here at the Public Accounts Committee, there are provisions in which the engineers could be surcharged and all of those things. So it has to be something that you take very seriously. You know, a lot of times I notice that we have a lot of young engineers, and I recognize that the engineer before us today is also a young engineer. But the seriousness of it is something that we have to reiterate. So you understands the gravity of the work that you're doing altogether. And I dare say when it comes to the guidelines, the legislations that actually guides this whole process, that is something that you guys need to have in your possession so that you hold that like your own personal Bible, you walk around with it, because when you are here answering, you are held accountable also to whatever extent your job so permits. So be very careful about your responses and be very careful as to how you go about your task on a daily basis. Make sure that you are properly guided, not just by word of mouth from persons, but also by the documentation that guides this process altogether, because that is where you will be held accountable.
Thank you, members. Ario, I want to thank you and your team for making an appearance. We're not?
I have other questions. I didn't know that I'm at paragraph 1003. I have no idea that.
Go ahead, member.
1,003 on that paragraph. So, Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General highlighted the heavy maintenance of servicing of vehicles. PPV 1998, we spent almost $3 million on it between 2 years. Could we be advised of how old is this vehicle?
I'd say it's okay to spend that million to stay full.
Ario?
I'm not aware, can I say how old is the vehicle, but what I know, when the vehicle was sent to the region, it was a used bus, 52-seater bus.
A used
52-seater bus.
used 52-seater. So,
Personally.
is this vehicle on the asset register of your region?
Yes, it is.
Was it purchased or donated?
It was donated.
It was donated. Could you say when it was donated?
I was advised sometime during 2016.
2016. Could you tell PAC what is the total amount of money we've spent on spares and maintenance of this vehicle from the time it was donated to now?
Sir,
To 2018.
thank you.
That's what I mean. We discussed in 2018.
Relax, down boy, down.
Yes, Honorable Member, I can get the information for you, but I don't have it right now to me.
Mr. Chairman, PAC must take note that donations, as good as they are, whether they are vehicles, computers, or medical supplies, because you could get a donation of medical supplies, and what somebody's actually doing is dumping on you, because it's just about 2 months to expiry, and they don't want to have the problem of disposing of it, and they dump it on us. I don't know anything about the Sputnik
Oh, like the
V.
Sputnik V vaccine?
I don't know anything about Sputnik V
Okay,
being
no, I
with
was
short
just
expiry
asking. I
date.
don't know. I was asking.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Auditor General.
Mr. Chairman, I am making a recommendation that on items for donation, that there must be full disclosure before the donation is made as it relates to if it's vehicles, age, drugs, expiry date, computers, years of manufacture, because you could get computers donated, somebody get a good photograph, and the parts available for them are no longer available. And vehicles, the same thing. Because we might be looking like we're getting something, but we have really been a dump yard, and it's costing us to deal with this. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like this to be answered and considered as a recommendation. Mr. Chairman, I'm still on the floor. Secondly, the minibus PSS 8404, is it on your asset register?
Yes.
Was it donated or purchased?
Ario, can you provide the PSC with all of the donated vehicles or laptops, whatever that the region has in its possession, to PSC within a week's time.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
But could we get an answer to this question? Is it donated or purchased?
Yeah, there was a donation.
Another donation that we have spent $2 million on in 2 years for spares.
So, could I get some clarification on that particular minibus? Because, to the best of my knowledge, that was not a donation. So, could we clarify when it comes to minibus? I mean, this is I'm a little
Come on,
at a
we
bit
gotta
of
be guided
advantage
correctly.
here because I know these matters personally. But when it comes to PSS 8404, if I'm not mistaken, that minibus would have come through Agatash for the community, the CDC at Agatash, and then it would have passed on. They were operating it there, and then it went on to the
Where?
Ministry of Education. So if you're saying it was donated from the CDC to the ministry, then I can actually give all the events that transpired between that made that happen. So I'm interested to hear that clarification.
Aria, just ensure that your response is indeed accurate, because we don't want the committee to be misled by what information you provide us with.
Sonia Simmons at the level of council make a big story out of it that she's the constituency representative and she should handle the matter, and was given over to her because of poor management of the event was sent over to the Ministry of Education because they were
Mr. Chairman, I'm waiting on the answer from the REO while the colleagues are having a private conversation.
A bilateral discussion.
No, I think the issue is that could the REO say who donated it?
For the benefit of the PSC, can you determine, provide us with the information who actually donated this bus?
Well, I'm not too sure who donated the bus, but the bus was donated.
You're not too sure what it was donated? What really are you saying, sir?
But you said it's on your asset register. Because if you are funding a vehicle that is not on your asset register, that's another matter.
Is it on your assets register, sir?
Why don't you know? You're just sitting out there doing nothing.
Mr. Chair, if that particular question, could we also say, because in order for it to be here in the Auditor General's report, it had to come from, I'm assuming, the asset register, all right? But the question that I think would be more pertinent is when, like what was the date it was placed on the asset register?
Yes. Are you?
No, but
Yes,
that's
I'm
the question
not
they
too sure because I say I'm not too sure if it's on the asset register.
All
Not too
right.
sure if it's on the asset
No,
register.
but can you clarify? You're using the word donated. Do you mean donated by like an NGO or donated by a government agency? Because I think it might clarify for us which one you're using. A government may give at some point, an agency may give a minibus, which was what was done to Agatash for the school children to attend school. That was the original of it. Wait. All right, well, we have different memories. So that it was donated, the main point we get, it was donated. Donated, it was not bought by the region. But the region did not use capital funds to buy. It was donated by a government agency, not an NGO. And I would hope that all the members sitting here from your RDC, I see some of them sitting with a handbag on the back and no documents, no records. What kind of treatment of the RDCs, of the PSCs is this? Why do you walk with people here who don't intend to be part of the meeting and help you, REO? I've seen someone sitting with a handbag on the bag whole time with not a piece of paper. Throughout this meeting, not taking notes, not taking anything. No, I'm sorry, REO, I'm Chairman. This is a body appointed by the Parliament and under the Constitution of Guyana. Please don't treat us with disrespect. You may not like us individually, nor our parties individually, but we are here playing a role. And anybody who comes to this body must come prepared to participate, to assist the accounting officers. If someone only wants to have their handbag or their hand on the table and leave the room. This is a team effort to try to resolve issues and to make sure that we're financially accountable and transparent in this country. This is not a joke.
The question still remains, Ario, and we are waiting a response.
In terms of the donation of the bus, I don't know if it was donated, but the information who it is donated
You said
from,
it was donated?
Yeah.
Okay. But you can't ascertain by who?
by you.
Well, we will need to know that.
Okay.
Who keeps those records? Who keeps those records in the RDC?
The registry department.
And do you have a representative of the registry department here?
No.
And who else is above the registry department?
Who's above the registry
Who
department?
supervises the registry department?
Yeah, the parcel officer.
And so you came here for these items on the agenda. And so no one thought to walk with any documents to do with 103, 1003, to do with vehicles listed there and the license numbers given?
Comrade Teixeira, before that, the REO said, Chair, with your permission, that the personnel officer supervises the registry,
Asset registry.
the asset registry. And this is another function, I'm guided by the Accountant General, that this is a function that should fall under the Deputy Regional Executive Officer, and in this instance, it should be under the Chief Accountant, on the basis of there not being a Deputy Regional Executive Officer.
That is irrelevant to the question I'm asking.
No, but it has to do with
If you
record
have
keeping.
people here, they walk with the requisite. If you prepared for this meeting, 103 talks, 1003 talks about vehicles. Therefore, somebody knows to walk with the asset registry or photocopy the relevant page to answer questions.
Well, as the Chief Accountant should have committed
I'm not saying who should
on
come.
the
I just
instruction
asked.
of the REO.
I'm saying asked who should have walked with it.
All right, you'll have to provide our information to the PSC.
Mr. Chair, I asked for the floor
Yes.
quite a while ago.
Go ahead.
and not.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just don't want us to leave on the record the comment that made by the Honorable Member Edgell about donations. I thank Madam Teixeira for raising the donations comes from not only the private sector, it comes from within the other government agencies as well. I just don't want, because of course when we do come to bear the report for 2018, 2017, 2018, the question of the age and those things like that, I don't think that's a function of PAC. I think that that comes on, well, the finance sector, the Ministry of Finance on donations and those things like that. Yeah. So I want us to be clear what PAC is saying in connection with donations. That because that agency, I can remember, Mr. Chair, if you can recall, Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs donated buses to other agencies. But when we make a blanket statement saying that we cannot accept donation for certain either age and levels, and so it is very blanket. So I think PSC should at least
Never said that.
Clarify what we are saying and recommending. I'm just saying so for the record, sir.
Sir, just to put some clarity to some things, if I may.
Go ahead.
Just to give some clarity to this particular matter, I think the difficulty that the RDC may be having in giving the date of this donation and how it was donated is because And this is something that you can fact check, but I'm just giving you a bit of insight on this so you can check with these departments, these agencies after to provide better information, is that this particular bus was donated, but it was not donated to the RDC initially. But this particular bus here was donated to the CDC of Agatash, the Community Development Council of Agatash, and it was donated there as as something for economic activity for the community. And the CDC there worked the bus as a passenger bus to get resources that was spent within the community. However, after the local government election in 2016, the representative of constituency 9 there that person took over after that. That person took over the management of the bus for the economic activity. After a while of the bus not being utilized, the bus was actually given over or donated, so to speak, to the Department of Education there in Region 7, because the bus was being used to transport school children from Agatash to the schools in Baltica and 3 Mile Secondary. So because of that, the Ministry of Education was taking on the role to do maintenance and provide fuel for the bus, because it was only being used then to transport children. So that is the history behind that particular bus. So it wasn't donated to the RDC. It was donated to the Community Development Council of Agatash, the CDC, and after then it was actually given to the ministry, the Department of Education at the regional level. That is why the RDC would have not gotten the record then. That's why I asked when was it actually put on the register, because that would give you a direct time to when the RDC, well, the Department of Education comes under there, took responsibility for that bus. So those are the areas.
And when they parked it up.
Mr. Chairman, may I continue my questions? Thank you, sir. REO Sir Akbar boat. In 2018, we spent $2.179 million to the maintenance of this boat. Could you say what kind of boat is this? Is it a wooden boat, a fiberglass boat? What kind of boat it is?
It's a wooden boat.
And could you say this 2.179, what it was used for?
Actually, the repairs was not on the boat itself.
The engine?
The engines too.
Good. So could you tell PAC what's the cost of a new engine?
A new 200 power horse and 200 horsepower at about 3.2 presently.
No. We want no assumption here, sir. Exactly. And we don't know where the region would have procured it from. So we can't make those assumptions to PAC. Is either you say to PAC how much money the region would have paid for the boat, or we cannot accept any other assumption.
In fairness to the REO, perhaps I misdirected the question, because we spent 2.179, sir, yes, 2.3 million on Sir Akbar to repair the engine, and a new engine is just about $3.5 million or something of the sort. Right? A 200 horsepower. Is it a 200 horsepower that is on this boat?
Yes, 200 horsepower.
How old is this engine that we are spending $2.3 million on in 1 year?
I was advised the boat was from 2016.
So we bought it in 2016, and we have already spent between 2016 and now, 2018, which is 2018 we are examining. I said now it's 2018. I'm talking 2022. We would have spent almost 75% of the capital costs on maintenance. Hence, the Auditor General says in his recommendation it would be more economical to dispose of the vehicles, recorded high maintenance costs. Did we buy this engine new or was it a used engine? Nobody will buy something and in 1 year you spend 75%
We
of
just
the
allow the
capital
man to
cost.
answer the question.
Come on, Edu.
Because people would actually do it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was new engine.
A new engine.
Yeah.
Yes.
A new engine bought in 2016 and the capital cost, the maintenance of that engine 2 years after was 75% of the capital cost.
Sir,
Do you,
Sir,
could I
just-
finish my questioning, please? Please, let me finish my
Before
question.
he responds, I need
Well, I know,
a clarification.
I know it is kind of difficult,
No,
but let's
ask
get
the
it through.
question, don't answer it.
Yes.
No, I am not responding, sir, and I have a right to ask a question also. No. Well, that is the person I'm asking for a clarification from. Sir, I have an important question, and I would like for it to be given the floor for this question. Because
When I ask a question, is I answer.
my question is, sir, I see that what we're examining here is Sir Akbar, and we're examining a boat, but I hear questions being for an engine, so I just want to know if we are...
engine.
Sir,
But we
I
need
want
the
to know
reports.
if there were between this here, sir. I just see it being as the boat here,
I asked that
and I want to
question
know
before.
if this figure here actually caters for the engine and the boat, or the
I
engine
asked
alone.
the question before. I asked the gentleman.
Ario, the question concerning the amount of money is here.
Oh, Lord.
Is it for the boat and engine? The repairs? Because it was a purchase of a new boat.
No, that's a different one.
No,
That's 104.
this is maintenance cost.
So the maintenance is to the engine,
To the
and the
engine.
boat,
To the
or just
engine.
the engine alone?
103.
Because the boat can't go without the engine, it's a boat.
Exactly.
That's where the engine belongs.
AG?
So we buy a truck and then we buy the engine, separate. I understand how it is. I understand your feelings.
Akbar is a boat, it's not a map. It just describes a map. And 2.3 is the maintenance of the boat. Of whatever.
In 1 year.
This Sir Jordan, Sir Akbar, Sir Peter, you don't put the boat or something.
Maintenance of the
High maintenance agreement.
Chairman, I want to know if this 2.3 was spent one time or it is an accumulated sum over months.
For the boat and engine.
Well, I don't know if it's boat and engine, but what I'm seeing before me,
We need clarification.
yes, I'm seeing before me, Sir Akbar boat, 2.347
Mr. Chairman, I was on the floor and I specifically asked the REO, number one, what kind of boat it is. Is it a wooden boat or a fiberglass boat? In his response, he said, this expenditure had to do with the engine.
Yes, said that.
That is what the accounting officer says. Hence my question about the maintenance of the engine. Is the engine on the boat? The auditor?
No. The question.
Yeah, because
The REO said it's
The REO is responding. The REO is responding, not what is in the
There's a lot of
report.
things this Ario said that he changed his mouth on as we sought for the clarification,
So,
you know.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman-
not saying that he's wrong.
Mr.
but I'm
Chairman,
asking him
could I
to
be allowed to
conform.
continue my questions, please?
Not changing.
I would like the REO to give clarity with respect to this amount of monies that were spent. Was it on the repairs of the boat and engine, or is it specific to the engine alone? And I would rather you read the Auditor General's report before you respond to this committee.
This 216.
Mr. Chairman, while we are getting that, the areas researching the answer, could the general help PAC? If when he refers to the boat, if he's referring to the boat minus the engine, or he's talking about the component of a boat and an engine he's referring to as a boat?
Yes.
Could the Auditor General please tell us?
I will answer to that.
Mr. Chair, sorry, what was the question, Honorable Member? Through the Chair.
When you refer to the 2.347 that was spent on Sir Akbar, a boat, were you referring to the boat and engine, or just boat, or boat?
Mr. Chair, based on the records provided to us, it was referring to boat. It didn't specify, and we have the figures there. But it didn't specify if it was the boat or the engine, based on the vehicle listing provided. BOAT boat.
In the reference to the BOAT, 2.347 million was spent on the BOAT. The REO has said to us his understanding is that it was spent on the engine of the BOAT. Am I correct, sir?
Yes, you're correct.
Well, where did you get this information from? Because the REO, the audit office report would have been guided from the information that you would have provided, and the AG's office is saying that this money was spent on the boat. How is it that you're telling PAC it was spent on the engine?
Because the boat and the engine is one. What, BOAT or BOT? BOAT.
Sir, ignore the honorable member. The question is to you. Could you please provide PAC with a response?
Yes, when they say the boat, it means the boat and the engine. When you can repairs on the engine, you normally say the engine, if Sir Akbar, not Sir Akbar engine, it's Sir Akbar boat.
That is even more confusing.
Mr. Chairman.
What is he talking about?
Mr. Chairman, to give guidance, we have to be very objective. The reason why I asked...
Can we, hold on, Mr. Member here. Can the REO provide PAC with the payments, a breakdown of the payments for this report that the Auditor General states that it was for a boat? You're saying it's an engine. So can the REO provide us with a breakdown of these payments, the printout, because it's supposed to be in your records. If you're paying out monies, you're supposed to have receipts for these payments.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Can you provide us with that?
I can.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that in the instance of Sir Akbar, there is a unit, a boat as a unit which comprises wooden thing that float and is powered by a mechanical apparatus.
And I think that's what was captured in the Auditor General's
the
report.
BOAT comprises BOTH, the wooden thing, and the engine.
Sir, let me just say, on that point, I have to state that when it comes to using this boat, well, you can't just assume that the boat and the engine is being put together here, because if an engine is down, another engine could be used on the said boat, and they can continue to use the boat and so on. So let's just put that in mind. This engine doesn't come affixed to this boat. So you can't just always consider it as one unit. That cannot be like that.
Sir, may I proceed? May I proceed with my question, sir?
Go ahead.
So, I'm flagging that based upon current market value for an engine, 200 horsepower, we would have spent about 75% in maintenance of the capital costs in 2018. Sir
We don't
Peter,
know that. We need proof.
Sir Peter.
Mr. Edgel, that statement cannot be in the record.
Why
You
cannot
the cell engine?
We are dealing with 2018 2018 reports, not current value for
All right.
a boat and engine.
Could the REO provide PAC
And everything in this country,
in
Ghana.
writing of what would have been the capital cost for a new engine in 2018?
We need proof, quotations.
Well, we could get that too.
What do we ask though?
Did you buy any engines in 2018 on your capital budget based upon the records?
I don't know time to. I don't check my store app already, you know. Yeah. Store app already.
Yeah, yes, we do. Yes. Yeah.
Barrett,
Could you tell us what was the capital cost for a 200 horsepower engine that the region procured in 2018?
I can't say offhand right now, but you can get information.
You get it to us?
Yeah.
Good. So,
Mr.
sir,
Chair, come on, man. Mr. Chair,
You have the
it is
floor.
quite, I'm not, sorry, but I've been asking even about like half an hour or so to have asked a simple question. And you refuse to acknowledge me.
Sir, that's not accurate. I didn't notice your hand up. That is why you weren't given the floor. But you have the floor now.
Sir, I asked if the line of questioning came about the boats and those things like that. If the REO, if the region is going to go into things like this, what the PSC should know is the usage of this boat. You mean if you're going to make a comparison between capital costs and three-quarter costs and 75% and those things like that, can the REO, while he's researching, provide PSC with the hours of working of that boat from 2016 to when the repairs were required, when the repairs were required in 2018, since he's keen to talk about such things. So all the hours of working, where it worked, etc. The maintenance record of the boat in between 2016 and 2018. If we're going to go there, sir, we have to address this holistically. Sir, so I'd ask, sir, that all of the information in line with Ms. Edge's question be provided as well, sir.
Ario, you're so guided for the response to PSC.
Okay.
May I ask
thank
the
you.
Auditor General a question?
Yes.
On 1003, you pointed out that 14.86 million was spent on vehicle spares and maintenance, which you considered high. But when you check the actual, what you call records of the use of the vehicles and boats, were these above board? In other words, your question seemed to be high maintenance cost, but you didn't seem to question the use of the vehicles, whether they were log books, whether they were records kept, and whether the maintenance costs were too high. That's why I'm wondering, what was the query you're asking about? Just the fact that it was too high? Because the records that we're asking for, do you have them? Did you see them? Because a number of people have asked about the records of the use of these vehicles and boats. Did you look at those, Auditor General, and were those satisfactory?
Through the chair, just give me a second. Let me clarify.
Mike?
because when it was delivered, it was
But she's asking regarding that.
Yeah, we get it.
They presented us. Yes. And the nature of the journeys and so on. Mr. Chair, I'm guided by my auditors, and they had seen the logbooks.
Yes, Mr. Chair, could you pay attention to your response? Go ahead, AG.
Mr. Chair, guided by our auditors, they would have presented logbooks which would have detailed who would have authorized the journeys and when they were undertaken. And I think those weren't any red flags at that point of unauthorized use.
The vehicle spares and maintenance.
That is correct.
and not the use of the vehicles, use of the. So these questions you had to do with, say, with Sir Akbar and so on, very high costs.
Yes, it's cost, related to the cost.
AG, the cost of spare parts in the interior compared to out here, isn't it far more expensive?
No, but these are particle boats.
You know,
Mr. Chair.
so probably that could
Mr.
contribute.
Chair, can I have a question as well, please? I hope you're hearing me this time.
Go ahead.
Can I ask directly the audit office, since they're the ones that raised the query and they question the cost of maintenance versus new, is there any regulation, is there any guidelines, is there any, I don't know, laws which directs accounting officers to say that if say the maintenance cost is above 50% of the purchase price that you should, I mean, is there any particular guideline or that you can point to the accounting officer to say you should be following these guidelines? Or is it in your opinion, the audit officer's opinion, that this statement is made? So in other words, which store regulation, FMMA clause, guideline from the finance sector, which has been broken or breached in this case that's why you flagged it?
Mr. Chair, in response, no, I'm not aware of any guidelines that would talk about the costs associated with maintenance. I think what we would have flagged here is the frequency and the values throughout the period examined, because in one instance we had 1.17 million in December, then we had a 639,000 in August, and then we had a 482 in March, all of the same year. For the same, this is Akbar, Sir Akbar.
Mr. Chairman, in direct response to Mr. Patterson's inquiry, I think the Auditor General should outline that when they are auditing, what they audit for, because part of their scope of work is value for money. Part of their examination of expenditures ensuring that we get value for money.
Sorry, this is not value for money audits, these are financial audits.
But in any audit, in any audit, comments can be made if you're getting value for money.
Differently, sir. The Auditor General, they let him clarify.
This is financial.
Audit office, can you say what type of audit was conducted?
I tell you.
Mr. Chair, it would have been a financial audit.
Was there in that financial audit a value for money as well conducted?
Mr. Chair, you can't ask that because
But that is, sir,
Because that is what the members are ascertaining.
Sir, that would be, I think we are going into a policy question and we cannot take policy questions at the level of PAC. This is finance we're dealing with. I think we're going into the realm of policy and we cannot go there.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make it very clear, and the Auditor General should tell me if I'm right or wrong. An audit is taking place. If I spend $300,000 on spares for a motorcycle for maintain it, and a new motorcycle costs $175, that is an audit query as it relates to value for money.
But that is capital versus current expenditure.
Whether it's capital or current.
Sir, I think we need
Whether
to
it's capital or
distinguish
current.
that.
Mr. Chair, sorry to butt in, because if I don't butt in,
go ahead.
I think we do the AG's report in front of you, sir, and in front of all other members. I'm online, is a financial audit, sir. Coming out, arising out of a financial audit, the AG may, and he's done on several occasions, and I know he's now set up a value for money branch. He may do a separate value for money audit. Please, sir. Right? Please, sir. We have members of the audit office here. Do not allow us to go down the wrong line here. It's a financial audit we are undertaking here. If the PSC wants a value for money audit, we can direct him to do that. But don't let us go down this line on this, sir, please.
And Chairman, we cannot question value for audit. We cannot question value for the value of the product versus how much we spend if we don't know the time frame it was spent. For example, we don't know if this money was spent all at once for this repair. God, 4 different times.
And he's concerned about the amount.
4 different times. So when he spent the 4th time, how much was the amount?
Mr. Chair, the first instance in March of the year for Sir Akbar would have been 482,780.
480 something thousand dollars.
The second instance,
That's the first one.
the second was 639,900 in August. The third instance was 51,700 in October, and in December, 1.173.
So the point is, the Auditor General recognized the concern after he would have recognized the parts of the breakdown in the spending. Everything they spend one time, Jim.
All right. Member Teixeira, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure. The issue is that under the FMA Act, that we're expected to use taxpayers' money judiciously. We're expected to make sure that our people get the best value for the money that we use on their behalf. The Auditor General is expected to examine.
Mr. Chair, can the member quote exactly where on the FMLA Act is using total?
Put your hand up.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, please protect me from Mr. Patterson.
Please
protect me from Mr. Patterson.
Member Patterson, you'll have the floor after Member Teixeira.
Why every time some people speak in this place, Patterson has to jump in? Press your button and put your hand up. And wait.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me sitting in front of you. Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General's office has a right to bring to the attention in their audit report that their cost of maintenance is high. In this case of 1003, it's saying that 14.8 million of a budget of 20 million was expended. So that's how much percentage? Almost 70% of the budget spent on vehicles, on a number of vehicles that were high. It is not a value for money in the sense that it wasn't doing an audit in terms of value for money. So you're getting into all sorts of sticky things. The issue is the Auditor General is saying that the cost was high in your current budget for vehicles and spares. The Auditor General office says under question that they did not question the usage of the vehicles, the boats. What was noted was the high cost and that it was repeated. And if we look at several ministries and agencies, you will find the audit querying that costs are high. In some cases, the Auditor General has pointed out, or the region has pointed out, the ministries point out that some of these vehicles are old, 10 years old, 15 years old, and therefore the cost is high. And therefore the recommendation sometimes is that they acquire a newer fleet of vehicles. So I don't know why you're getting into value for money and all these things. The Auditor General's office has noted a concern. It is within their scope of work to do that, and that we have to determine if it is so that it was a brand new engine that was bought, but it doesn't appear to be that. What the Auditor General is saying, there were 4 payments, which makes it look as if they were trying to repair something, and eventually, at the end of the year, a lot of money was spent. Those send up red flags in almost any expenditures, not just this. So I think that we're getting into an argument of what the Auditor General is allowed to comment on or not. That's not our prerogative at the PAC. Our prerogative is to examine what the Auditor General has commented on or observed and to investigate it in greater detail. Not to question whether the Auditor General has a right to question the expenditure on vehicle spares. He has a right to question every cent that is spent in every agency, in every ministry, in every region, every NDC. He doesn't though, he does random sampling, so I don't see what you're getting excited about.
Member Patterson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like, for the records where Madam Tashira goes the FMAA Act, that you can actually direct us with. I don't want you to be misleading, Mr. Chair. I raised it to you and you did not follow it up, but you can. Secondly, when we come to value for money, it's quite a different issue. The usage of the vehicle, if it's used 24 hours a day for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, versus just occasionally, all of those usage, the mileage and those things, that was not done. What has been done here, sir, is why I'm saying it is different, is the Auditor General has looked and said that you have one vehicle, one boat, one engine, Mr. Agatak, and we spent $2 million on it or $1 million on it. And in his opinion, spending $1 million on the boat is high.
Yeah, it is, if you know about
And he's just doing that, sir, based on numbers. He has checked and he said that the logbook and the usage is absolutely correct, sir. He's not even taken the time to divide the mileage. We make a comment on that, those things like that. He has not done that. He said that the logbook is in order and there's nothing he had found. And he's right there and he can repeat himself if he wants to change his mind, but it's all recorded. He can say that he said there's nothing off with the logbook. I see Madam Bashir is quoting I can see that quoting the Auditor General now. Anyway, move on, sir. So when we now start to talk about value for money is a direct correlation of the capital cost you pay versus the mileage versus the usage versus the passenger benefit, etc., etc. All of that was not done, sir. This is a financial audit, and he said, and the reason why it's flagged because he said in the Auditor General report that the number or the percentage spent on the boat is high, and I want that to be there, and the Auditor General can clarify for the records. And I don't want us to be misleading, and I also would like Madam Tashira to clarify where the value for money part is in the FMA. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Sir, could I get the floor as I was requesting a little bit on that same matter?
Let me allow the AG office to respond and I'll give you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
You have the floor, member.
Mr. Chair, just to add to the type of audits, we would have done a financial and compliance audit. But when we conduct audits, we look at economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in any audit that we do. And if we look at economy in the sense which we look at it, by definition, it says acquisition of resources in the right quantity and of a quality no higher than is needed for the job. That is doing things at a lower cost. So it's an area of concern because is it economical to keep maintaining this vessel, or probably it's maintenance works you're paying this cost for, not capital?
The chairman.
Member Finance, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I was on the floor asking questions.
Member Finance, you have the floor.
I was asking a while. Thank you, sir. On the same...
It is my question, everybody jump in
on the same...
You have the
Sir, because we're giving clarity. Sir, we're giving clarity to your question. You started by saying it's the engine.
Member Finance, you have the floor.
Sir, could the accounting officer say what Sir Akbar is used for this specific boat? First question. Sir Akbar.
The school boat transport school children.
It's a school boat. How many areas does this boat actually service?
Westerbeck, Carrow, Batavia, Cartabo.
Cartabo. Any to Goshen Rivers View?
But not a boat working the
Another boat is working that.
That's what
So
now.
now, then, was this boat working that area then?
Starting now, we're talking about 2018.
we had no boat working in 4 years.
Okay. So, and the boat makes how many trips per day?
2 trips in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's not true, sir.
No, not.
That's not true, sir. Mr.
Tell me 0.6 mile across the Deborah
Don't
River.
let Mr. Edges be giving numbers here. That's not so,
0.6
sir.
of a mile across the
No, that's
Deborah
all.
River.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Edgel is incorrect. Let not be stricken
Mr.
from the
Edgel has not
record.
been given the floor. You have the floor.
The tax
And I can, and the same for Sir Peter, what is this boat used for?
the other school.
There is a boat on the Public Works department. Do site visits.
And is this Sir Peter the one that is also utilized for the trips to Rivers View, Goshen?
No.
So Sir Gordon is used for that one?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman, when all of the circular conversation went
You have
on,
the floor, member.
I was on the floor asking specific questions on the paragraph 1003. And we were discussing the maintenance costs of an engine. I just want to remind us where we were. I would like to continue
By a chance.
my questioning
All this deflection.
on this issue, sir. Based upon the Auditor General's recommendations of 2018, did you see any action or records of actions taken when you assume office to correct these deficiencies as it relates to the maintenance?
Yes, I do.
Could you tell me what was the actions that were recommended or actions that were taken?
We buy 2 million, right? We buy 2 million, right? Yeah, we have purchased 2 new engines.
We have purchased 2 new engines.
Yeah.
Could you tell us the cost of those 2 new engines?
I can't have the cost right now.
Could you be able to supply PSC with those figures?
Yes, we will.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to remind PSC that we had a similar issue that occurred from the Auditor General's report when we examined the GDF as it relates to a vehicle, its consumption and its maintenance. We did not have this circular conversation for the GDF, but for some reason we have big issues of value for money and all kind of
Member
things.
Edgel.
Yes, sir, I'm making a point.
Stick to the
Yes, but we
2016
must be
2018 report.
consistent. We must be consistent in the way we do
You can't
things.
dictate to members how they can and cannot ask
Well,
questions.
you can't dictate to me either, Mr. Chairman,
No,
what
I'm
I can
saying
say
to
and what I
you,
cannot say when I find the PAC not being consistent in the handling of matters here.
That is nonsense.
You could call it whatever you want, but we dealt with the
floor to
we
ask
dealt with the
question
vehicle
on
for
the
the GDF,
report
but we didn't have all the
of
commentary.
2017 and 2018.
It was not when we were examining 2017 and 2018 of the GDF.
But you
with the people
cannot
sitting
tell
right there.
members how to ask questions.
But I'm trying to tell you that the PAC must be consistent in the
How
way
are
they
they not
handle
being
matters.
consistent because they're asking questions that you like?
It ain't got nothing to do with the questions,
Sir,
it got to do with
just
your
answer your
ruling
member
and
question,
what you're
man.
allowing. And I'm making the point here again, whether it's uncomfortable or it's the uncomfortable truth, whatever you want to call it, the actions that were taken is that new engines were bought.
Yes.
Since the new engines were bought, Could you tell us about the maintenance cost? Does it continue or?
Mr. Chair, how are we going there, sir?
Sir, if we go there, you're going to get upset with me because I could go down a line of questioning when it comes to 2021, sir.
We're checking to see if the problem is solved.
Sir.
That's all we're checking.
Control this meeting, sir. Because I'm being very, very restrained there. How are we going down there? The member sent out
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm on the floor.
Let him, sir. You're allowing the
Mr. Chairman.
REO to give hearsay answers, you know. He said he's
Because
going
you
to
can't
do
help
this.
it.
You have
That's
to
why.
provide PAC. You start off by saying if you don't know.
Mr.
don't
Chairman, am I
answer.
on the floor or not
But
on the
you're
floor?
allowing that now, sir. Come
On
on.
the floor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, when the Auditor General highlights a problem, the job of the PAC is to check to see if it has been addressed. I have asked a simple question. If action was taken, the answer is yes, we bought new engines. My follow-up question was, did we continue to see high maintenance costs? Because if the issue of high maintenance costs continues after you buy a new engine, we may need to examine what is going on with the maintenance people.
Mr. Jill, the issue of maintenance varies. So you cannot ask such a question.
Why you can't?
The maintenance of the road in 2019 would be a different maintenance in 2010, depending on how the road has been affected by weather, traffic, so many different factors.
Continue. I have no further questions
Thank
on
you,
this.
sir.
It is because we are concerned about how taxpayers' money is spent. That is why we're suppressing questions. We are very
one is
concerned.
suppressing questions.
We
We're
are
asking
very
you to
concerned
ask
about
sensible
how
questions.
taxpayers' monies were spent in 2018. So we are suppressing questions, altering questions, obfuscating issues, spinning around
that
things
will
to
be
make sure
stricken
the
from
truth
the
is not
record.
revealed. Thank you very much.
I instruct the committee to restrict that from the record.
Yes, because we don't want the truth to be known.
Your truth is a different truth.
Has this matter been resolved? In all our briefing notes, there is something there. So could the REO answer, have there been attempts to resolve this problem of the high cost of spares and maintenance? But all the briefing notes have a column that says, have you been able, suggested questions and observations?
What measures have you put in place, sir?
As I said earlier, we purchased some new engines for the boat.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Between, these three boats, Sir Gordon, Sir Akbar, Sir Peter, could the REO say if all three of these boats are up and functioning, running on the water currently?
Was I confirm one of the boat is working presently now as it is in 2022?
We could ask questions on 2022 now, because it's coming from that side of the floor. Consistent.
Member?
Allow the question. You could ask questions on 2022.
Can you go outside and take your call?
Listen, man. Consistency is a simple thing.
Member, the question has been posed. He's a poodle. He don't behave like that. Member?
Yeah.
The member's question has been posed.
Yeah, two of the three boats are presently working.
Members, do we have any other additional questions for this agency? Can you see which is not working?
Sir Gordon.
Okay. Yeah. Could you put down your mic, please?
Auditor General's briefing, what system has been put in place to minimize the maintenance costs of the region's fleet of vehicles? That is a question directly from the Auditor General's briefing notes. And so what systems have been put in place, REO, since 2018 to minimize the maintenance costs of the region's fleet of vehicles? So that's guided by the Auditor General and allowed in this committee.
That's the question that was
Circulate the
posed.
briefing notes.
Can you respond to
I
the
didn't
question?
say aye.
Yes, we normally carry out maintenance works, the vehicle, but we have put a system in place to minimize the maintenance because the maintenance work is ongoing.
The maintenance cost, REO.
The REO cannot determine the cost of maintenance. Can he?
No, well, let's, if you want to discuss it, let's discuss it. Because systems mean that one, in terms of regular servicing of the vehicles, of having scheduled servicing of whether it is minibus, cars, or boats, so as to reduce wear and tear, as you do on any vehicle. Secondly, in regards to the record keeping to know when certain spares or parts are wearing and that you need to schedule purchasing before they break down and they damage the vehicles. Those are systems, sir, in which you reduce cost. Because if you don't maintain a vehicle, you run it all the time, you don't keep your servicing times, and the vehicle burns out or collapses, it'll cost you 5 times more than if you were to send for servicing every 3 months or every 100,000 miles or whatever it is. So that's what we mean by systems. Putting in systems so that every driver, whether the boat captain or the driver of the vehicle, knows there's so much time he has to bring it in to be checked, to clean the engine, to wash the engine, whatever you do, change the oil, etc., so as to constantly make sure that they're not being run aground. I know, like Doretta, what the terrain is like in Region 7. You don't have to tell me about it. But that unlike maybe in Georgetown, where you might check it in a longer period of time, in Region 7 or so on, you may have to check it in the schedule may be shorter to make sure that you're on top of it all the time. So that's why we're talking about systems. Because by putting in systems, you reduce maintenance costs instead of having emergency costs, which are always more expensive, because then you have to rush and buy a part because the thing has to move. You got to pick up school children in the river, you got to go buy it at whoever's selling at whatever price. Whereas if you did it in a systematic way, you might be able to reduce the cost. That's what the question means. And I hope that's understood.
I have to
Hold on,
support that.
Has that been done? Is there a scheduled servicing of these boats after?
Yeah, but boats and vehicles.
Good.
Yeah, but is it the same schedule that you inherited, or did you amend the schedule?
Yeah.
It's something that we implemented now.
So it was.
Well, I'm not too sure. I was there.
Okay. Member Jarrett.
Yeah, I have to support what Mr. Chair is saying, but Ario just said that actually the boat Sir Gordon is now working, and a little earlier it was said that Sir Gordon was the boat that was actually transporting the school children from Rivers View back and forth. So now with that boat not working, I think how are the children being transported?
Ario?
Oh, we have another boat by the name of Sir Christopher, is plying the route. Goshen, what next year? Falmouth to it.
Names.
Is it
Why is so gender discriminatory?
I'm wondering why all of these boats are named Sir. I mean, besides the gender, but is this a Bartica thing or something?
That's not a Bartica thing. Good. Don't get. I endorse.
Okay. All right, members, do we have any additional questions to this?
No, but this boat, Sir Christopher, this is a RDC owned and controlled boat, Sir Christopher.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Members, do we have any additional questions for this agency? Okay, there being no other questions, Ari, I want to thank you and your team for making an appearance, and we want to remind you of your obligation to provide the responses to the questions that you did not provide those responses for within a week's time. Safe journey.